Okay. And maybe, I mean, yeah, and of course with opt-in options involving electronic communications, there's ways to do it in a really cost-effective way too.
Absolutely.
To some, this hearing is the product of a lot of different things, but to some extent, it was inspired by a piece that appeared in the San Francisco Chronicle, of all places, an article that you would have thought would have been in the LA Times, about the fact that LA's reluctance to vote by mail has really hurt Los Angeles' influence around the state. And, other states got on the vote by mail bandwagon much more quick. Other counties got on the issue much more quickly. And in fact, our vote by mail numbers are so much lower than everyone else's. In November, in LA County, it was 38% of our voters. In Humboldt County, the next lowest percentage was 57% in Humboldt County. That's the next lowest percentage of mail ballots. So, now, of course, according to the article, years ago, county officials decided that encouraging residents to vote by mail would bury the election office under a flood of postal ballots. So while counties across California have spent the past 20 years making it easier for voters to use their mailbox as a polling place, the state's most populous county refused to go along. Can you sort of explain that phenomenon just a little bit? And I know you've spoken about it a bit in your opening comments, but just kind of comment a bit on how important this is to the registrar recorder in the short term before we move towards some of the reforms that you talked about earlier.
Sure. I can speak for the last 8 years, not the last 20 years, and I can say that we have promoted vote by mail in LA County, and I don't think that you will find vast disparities in the manner in which we've done that as a county government compared to other counties. Now, the way campaigns and political parties have promoted vote by mail may look and feel different in other parts of the state. Historically, I'm probably not the best person to speak to that, but I think some of the impacts, and there are other speakers that I think can talk to this, are the demographics. I talked about that we have a plurality of our electorate that's under the age of 30 for the first time. I don't think vote by mail as a sole method of voting is relevant to that age bracket. I speak frequently, and I'm sure my son gets tired of me using him as an example, but my son is a recent college graduate. He's very engaged in elections, votes in every election. He could not tell you the price of a postage stamp, and he would struggle to tell you his mailing address because those are not ways in which he engages in his day-to-day life. So while I certainly support and will continue to advocate for increasing vote by mail options in Los Angeles County, I think that we have to be careful that seeing that as the sole method of increasing turnout. I also think that the demographic information you heard today is the description of the voters who are showing up to vote is also the demographic description of those people who are registered to be permanent vote by mail voters. So you may be increasing turnout amongst those demographics, but we're not necessarily reaching the communities that have not traditionally participated. So long way around your question. I believe that is true, that in the early stages of vote by mail in the state of California, that Los Angeles County was more resistant to vote by mail from an administrative standpoint. I think that I can say unequivocally that's not true now and has not been true for the past 8 years. The reality is if you come to our office during an election process, we're already buried in mail ballots. Despite our low percentage, we issue and process more vote by mail ballots than any jurisdiction in the country. And we have the capacity to take on more of that as the electorate moves in that direction. One final thing I'll say, which is a little bit off from your question, but pertains back to an earlier question about thinking futuristically about where we need to go. Vote by mail ballots are validated through a signature match. We confirm and determine the validity of a ballot by looking at the signature on that ballot envelope and the signature that the voter used at the time that they registered to vote. increasingly, and that is the sole method of validating those ballots. Increasingly, the quality of signatures, again, look at the demographics in our county, 18 to 25-year-olds, voters over 65, signature quality is deteriorating, and I don't believe that it's sustainable as a way to authenticate voters, and I think if we don't address that going forward, we run the risk of seeing increasing vote-by-mail activity in the state and then administratively disenfranchising those voters because their signatures don't match on those ballots. So I think that's another really down in the weeds technical issue, but it's an example of something that there hasn't been a lot of discussion on in California, and that transcends over to petitions, the petitions you have to get to qualify to be on the ballot. All of those, the sole method of validating those is a signature match. And
how do you resolve that? Like what are some of the ideas out there?
Well, I think there has to be an alternative method of authentication, whether it's a signature plus some other piece of data, whether it's a way to establish some sort of PIN number or some other biometrics. I don't have the solution to that. I just know that it's something that if we aren't careful, it's going to become an issue in the state.
Interesting. All right. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Logan. Really do appreciate your insights. And I just want to, I will say, I really do hope that if there are things from either involving resources or regulatory issues that you think are getting in the way of Los Angeles County's efforts to better engage the electorate and citizenry in the elections process, I hope you will be vocal and engaged with the state legislature on those issues, because this is something that we realize is a problem, and certainly don't want to be the impediment for your ability to make sure more LA residents and LA citizens are engaging in the process and voting.
Okay, thank you. And I would just say the flip side of that is I appreciate the opportunity to sit here and hear the people who who spoke before me and those who are going to speak after me, because there are a number of great ideas that have been generated just through this hearing that I think that we can pursue as well. Yeah, in fact, as Senator Hertzberg had to leave, but he in his effervescent way, he said, "There's so many great ideas here." So this is what we wanted to get out of this hearing, and I'm just excited to have the chance to discuss all these things. So thank you so much, and we'll now hear from the next panel. We've got actually two panelists from other counties to talk about the San Diego County experience, Michael Vu and Ben Hamatake, who's from Orange County, the Office of the Registrar of Voters. So thank you so much. Appreciate your patience as we've gone through the panels. Looking forward to hearing your experiences from two of our sister counties, Orange and San Diego. We'll first hear from Mr. Vu.
Thank you, Chairman Allen. I've got also prepared remarks and would be more than happy to answer any questions related after I make those remarks. Thank you for the great honor to address this joint committee today. My name is Michael Vu, Registrar of Voters for the County of San Diego. Having been in the field of elections for over 18 years, I have seen the ebb and flow of election turnout. So what makes the gubernatorial general election different? Is there a downward trend in our electorate participating in voting? Let me give you the highs and lows in San Diego County. Of all the gubernatorial general elections held in San Diego County for the past 32 years, 1982 was the highest turnout year at 68%. Our low was this past November 2014 election at 45%. So does this mean that it demonstrates a downward trend from 1982 to 2014? Not necessarily, at least in San Diego. If we look at all the gubernatorial general elections in between these 2 years, you'll see that there has been a rise and a fall throughout. For example, from the 1982 election, the next gubernatorial general election, where we experienced a 60+% turnout, was not 4 years later in 1986. It was 28 years later in 2010. Before this year's new low, the prior low was experienced. The low was experienced 12 years prior, in 2002, at 49%. So if there was a pattern to gain out of San Diego's experience, it is not that voter participation is declining year over year, election over election. Instead, voters are being very particular on when they want to participate. This was the lowest turnout, but our elections have demonstrated that this is not a trend as the long data shows. Don't look at this from a 1 or 2 election perspective, that is this past primary and general election. Certainly this election did not draw the turnout that we all would have liked. Why? As this committee deliberates on this topic, well, there are several other questions I would ask the committee to dwell on. What is an acceptable figure to consider a good or high turnout? And what should have been the turnout?